Hi, Brian. How are you doing today? Welcome to
Hey,
LTU Podcast for Amateur Hour.
thank you. I'm doing fine.
Right. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My major is architecture. I'm in the master's program. I can't really say what my year is because I've kind of gone at my own pace. And so I took some time off in the middle and I got back into things last year. And so I have 3 classes left. I have one more studio left, an elective, and then my portfolio at the end. So I'll be finished at the end of, I guess, at the midpoint of the summer next year, if all goes well.
And then where are you from?
So I'm from a town called London, which is about 200 kilometers from Detroit. Right now I live in Windsor, though, so I'm right across the river from Detroit. So most of my master's was done online, and then my undergrad was done at LTU campus. And I did St. Clair College in Windsor, which we have an articulation agreement. So I did St. Clair College for 3.5 years, and then I came into the master's or the bachelor program for architecture, and then into the master's. So I started a while ago. So I've been at this for a long time. I started my master's 5 years ago, and then I took a couple years break in the middle. Yeah, now I'm back at it.
So do you enjoy schooling in Canada or America more so far?
Oh
Or
man,
I guess
it was
did you
totally different. They were totally different. The college aspect of things in Canada was more of a trade school, so I learned AutoCAD and I learned building systems and building code and all of the guts of architecture. And then once I went to LTU, it turned more into the design and the theory and history and things like that. So I'm a history theory kind of guy. I also have a degree in psychology. That was my first degree when I came out of high school. So I enjoy academia. The college part in Canada was a little bit boring, but it was neat to have that perspective of knowing how things are put together and how the systems work together, so that when it came time to design, I had a little bit more of a background of structural systems and how materials work. But I do like, I mean, I love Detroit and I love Lawrence Tech. It's always been such a neat possibility for us to be able to come over and have access to all like world class everything.
well, that history of things working together had to be great for this project. It's a chair, right? Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's an easel. It's a kid's
Oh,
easel. It came about because of a design competition. When I was in my kind of break, I took a couple years break between when I started my master's and when I continued onto it. And in that time, I needed something. I tried to start my own business, but it didn't work out. And so I'd taken a job at the municipality, and so it was kind of boring. And I needed something to really, get the creative outlet. And so I entered a design competition that was put on by the Canadian Interior Design Expo. So it's called the International Interior Design Expo in Toronto, and they have a competition called the Woodshop Competition that they open up to everybody worldwide. And the idea of the competition is that in Toronto and in southwestern Ontario and in Michigan as well, so the ash trees were decimated by this emerald ash borer that started actually in Ann Arbor is where it was first started. The emerald ash borer came in and it just started killing all the ash trees. And so certainly in Toronto, there's a huge stock of ash trees that were all considered diseased and had to be destroyed. And so normally what happens is they go in and they cut them down and then they grind them up and it goes to landfill or gets whatever, because industry won't use diseased wood. And so part of this competition was, what would you do with all this wood if you had it at your disposal? And so it was open to any type of kind of industrial design object with a certain size limitation, mostly furniture, because that's what the interior design show is about. High school next door to me, that's an arts high school, and so they always have a fair, and a bunch of the students would set up a station where they would draw your picture, they'd draw your character. And so they'd sit on these kind of long bench things, and they had a piece of wood that slid in, and that's what they use. And they call them art donkeys. And they're really kind of clumsy, and I saw them carrying them around, and they were really awkward. And so when this competition came up, I thought, hey, that's a thing that really is over designed and has a lot of redundant parts. And I think we can do better than that. Part of my idea was that these easels would be used for industrial or for institutional settings, so museums and schools and things like that, where we could mass produce and they would be easily stored very easily. They nest together once you take them apart. And they're really simple because it's just two pieces that are almost identical. So even the tooling to make them would be simple. The two pieces slide together, and then you get the seat that's supported along with your surface to draw on. And so that's kind of how the whole design came about. Was I like looking at things and kind of reducing the redundancy of parts and simplifying the process. When I had my own business, I did digital fabrication, and so a lot of what I did was, along with the design stuff, figuring out how to make the stuff that I was designing. And so once you look at making multiple objects, then the process of making them becomes just as much fun as the thing that you're making itself. And so coming up with tooling and things like that cut down on production time became a really neat obsession. And so that was part of this design, is that simplicity of the parts, but also the simplicity of the process to build them. So the neat part about the competition is that when I was selected as one of the finalists, we were given access to this sawmill in Toronto where it was called Sawmill Sid, and Sid only cut down diseased trees. He didn't cut down good, healthy trees. He only cut down diseased trees, and he supplied all of the lumber for everybody. So once we were chosen as a finalist, I had to go to Toronto and pick up these raw pieces of lumber, and it was literally like, still had the bark on it. It was this great big slab that didn't even fit in my car. And then I took that from that raw state all the way down and machined it into what I ended up doing for this one was I machined it and cut my own plies, and I made my own plywood, and then I bent and glued up the pieces and basically made my own plywood. And so that was the process for this one. That was, I mean, totally scary to design something and have that, my SketchUp model and the neat little pictures that I made of it. And then they say, hey, you won, you got to make this thing now. So it was pretty crazy. And I had to call in a friend who he was a carpenter, and he had some machinery that was a lot bigger than mine. So he helped me get the plies cut, because it was pretty difficult. It was a pretty difficult task, but really neat. And one of the fun parts too is when I was in the show in Toronto, one of the judges for the competition, his name was Lars Dressler, and he's a super, famous for the furniture world in Toronto. Him and his brother have a small design firm, and they do furniture, and they do some of the coolest stuff out there. And he came up to me and he was like, man, I can't believe you cut your own plies to do this thing. Like, that is so awesome. So to have that guy come and give me a pat on the back and tell me good job, it was really, really super cool. Yeah.
And this is something you had never done before?
Nope, never done it. Most of the time that I was working when I had my own business, I worked with plywood because plywood's nice. It's easy. It's uniform. You don't have to worry about expansion and contraction and things like that, like normal, like a hunk of wood does. And so this was just like, okay, well, let's give it a shot and see. And then that's what most of all of this stuff is to take on the challenge and go for it. And like, man, I failed a lot on that project, and I almost ran out of wood. It came down to the last, I had one piece left, and it was like, okay, I said to my friend Mark, we have to get it this time because I don't have any other wood to do this with. So I'd made enough mistakes to know that I needed help. A lot of wasted pieces, but part of the learning process. So, but that was part of the excitement of this project, was just to go for it. And when it was all done, man, what a good feeling.
Well, those wasted pieces, they were just stepping stones to get that final, congratulations from the designers.
Exactly, yeah.
That recognition makes everything worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And to see it, that was the first time that I'd ever had any serious recognition, just in terms of my career as a designer. From when I started in school, you get your marks in school and the teacher tells you did a good job or something like that. But to actually go out and take something from prototype to full kind of, it was, I mean, it wasn't a retail level finish on it, but it was definitely, I'm at the point where now I can start producing, you know, full on retail level product. And so to go through that whole process and then have industry people say like, hey, this is good. Some of like the caliber of other finalists that were there just put me into this like whole other level of like, wow, yeah, I do know what I'm doing. I am a designer for real, So it was a really super cool experience to be in that arena with all these other heavy hitters.
Yeah, and now your work has been out there and it's been used. In your pictures, you have a girl
Yeah,
drawing on it.
yeah, that's my daughter.
How was
Yeah.
that? Was she a willing participant to model
Oh
for
yeah,
you?
she loved it. Yeah, she loved it. And the funny thing was that she had grown so quickly in that time period that when I measured her the first time to start making the project, by the time she actually sat on it, she had grown enough that it didn't quite fit her anymore. So I had to get her to kind of hover above it so that she wouldn't put her full weight on it because I thought she was a bit too big. But she loved it, and she used it a few times once we were done. But I got a little bit nervous because it needs a bit of work. But no, she had a blast, and she loved, even again, like coming to the show in Toronto where I had it on display, and the picture that she drew is on it, and so it was on. Her artwork was on display as well, so it was fun.
That's such a great touch.
Yeah, yeah.
When you display it at the DCDT, are you going to have her artwork with it as well?
Yeah, yeah. I might have her do a new one, but the one that she did, I mean, I haven't unboxed it for a really long time. So because that was 2 years ago. My wife was pregnant at the time. Now, yeah, now actually we had twins, so the
Oh,
twins
wow.
are almost 2. They were 2 in April. So yeah, so I don't have a whole lot of time on my hands for doing other stuff, but yeah, I still have her artwork in the box with it. So I have to figure out how I'm going to get it to DCT, DCDT as well, because the borders are closed right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to ship it or if I have a few friends that are essential workers that might be able to get it across for me and then maybe ship it from Detroit, but we'll see. I'll do my best to get it over there because it's again, it's neat to have your stuff on display.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Worst comes to worst, we'll get a skateboard and push it across the border.
We'll push it across. I'll throw it as far as I can. See what we can do.
I'm sure the guards won't have a problem with it.
No, they won't mind. I might have to go into quarantine for a little while, but it'll be
Most definitely, because your work is beautiful and the wood, your craft shows through it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So your biggest setback was just trying to figure out how to work with the wood, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that was the setback, and it was always a fear even from the start. As soon as I got that letter to say, hey, congratulations, you're a winner, let's get this thing built, and it was like a panic. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't have the equipment. I bought a saw to do it, and then the saw worked mostly but not fully, and so then I had to call my friend and say, hey man, I'm in a bad spot here. I'm able to just absolutely fail this project, but we made it through, and it was again the finish that I used on it was a finish that I'd never used before, so it was all a big learning process, and to have the deadline and to have the show as looming, it was like everything had to work, and so there was a lot of testing and a lot of again a lot of broken pieces, a lot of thrown out pieces, a lot of pieces that a lot of hours just shaking my head going, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And then you make it work. And that's part of it, right? All those setbacks and things, they're learning processes, and they're bumps that you need along the way to push you into the right direction, and you take them how you want. If you take it as a sign that it's time to fail, then you fail it and you move on, or you take it as a sign to move in a different direction. And I just kept going in a direction that ended up working out really well, and I was super happy with everything, and it was good. It was a really, really a fun project. And something too, I mean, that was a competition that I submitted designs for. I submitted different designs for it. This was, I guess, the third year that I'd submitted that my design got chosen. And it was funny because I as soon as I came up with the design and I did a couple of models and hit the submit button, I said to my wife, "This is gonna win it. I'm going to Toronto." It was just, I knew that I'd nailed it on this one. The other ones were good. My other designs were good. They were neat, but they didn't have like this. They didn't have a story, and they didn't have. They were just a design that I thought was neat. Where this one was, it had purpose. It was, I had a plan for manufacture. I had a neat little story that went along with it about, how I put it in my little blurb about how the trees provided nourishment for the emerald ash borer, and so to honor the tree, it nourishes in this form. It nourishes the minds of the youth as they draw and create. And so it had like everything had a meaning to it, and it was a neat, cohesive little project that it had a flow. It had a directive. So it was really fun.
Do you think your twins are gonna want ones now that you've already made one?
Yep. I've got all the pieces of the puzzle ready to go to make a couple more. It was something that I wanted to continue on with. I wanted to further design and what I realized, and I guess I would also call this one a setback too, is that the nature of the competition was that we had, along with coming up with the design, we had to build it, and we had to build it with ash that we got from Sawmill Sid. And the problem with the design, or the problem with things for that, is that taking a slab of wood and milling it down into the plies that I need to make this thing is a huge, intensive process. And there's a lot of other things out there that I've already taken care of that. So once I finished the design and we did the competition, and I knew that I wanted to keep working on the project and keep pushing the design, I found a supplier in Toronto that supplies raw skateboard deck material. And so I have a giant box of these pre-cut maple plies that are all exactly, the proper thickness all the way through, and they're all ready to go, and they're all ready to be bent up. So I have enough to make, I think, 7 or 8 more. I just need some time. I just need the babies to give me a little bit of a break. I need my job to give me a bit of a break. And I'll be ready soon to get back into it, because it was a really cool project. And I think that it's going to be something that I push a little bit more than some of my other ones, because I think I can sell some of these things, or I think I can sell the design. I just think it's really, really cool. It's one of those ones that I love. I love to show people. I love to tell the story about it.
The story behind it makes the whole process sound worth it. You talked a lot about how difficult it was making the wood be what it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult was it to bend the wood once you got it to be what you needed it to be?
It was, I'm not going to say it was easy, because wood is a neat thing. Again, this is a part of the learning process, is learning how the material reacts. And a wood cut really thin like that bends quite easily, depending on how the grain is shaped, right? And depending on how it gets cut on a certain angle. And so what I found on the first one that I bent was that the way that I'd cut the wood, it was almost like, so the wood was about 3.5 inches thick. And so when I cut it into plies, there was a big oval in the middle. That was the rings of the branch that came through the middle of the tree. And so as I bent that piece, those little layers, those little circles started to lift up along the sides. And so it was like, what? Like, I would never have thought that I would be able to, that would lift out of the wood as it bent. And so that was just one of those parts of the process of, hey, this is what wood does. We have to deal with it. And so what I ended up having to do was change the direction of the wood so that in the bend, I was dealing with more just flat grain and no knots or anything like that. So I mean, the wood bends, and it took a lot of clamping. It took every clamp that I had, and I had to buy more clamps than I had at the beginning. And it was a weird process. I mean, it was again something that I'd never done before. But I think taking the clamps off was the scariest part
Yeah.
because I mean, I had no idea if the glue was going to hold, if it was uniform enough. I mean, it was just this like, I don't even know what you call that. Like it was like a jack in the box that I didn't know if it was going to pop out or not. And it did. I mean, like it was good. I undid all the clamps and it stayed where it was. And then there was a little bit of glue on the edges that had stuck to the mold. And then when I popped those out and it stayed flat, I was like, whoa, it was awesome.
Well, I think it looks amazing, and you did a great job, and everyone who helped you also did a great job. So is there anybody that you want to give a big shout out to?
I'd say my family for putting up with me through it because it was tough. There was a lot of anger and frustration through it. A friend of mine, Mark, he doesn't have social media. He just likes to make stuff in his garage. I mean, he saved my life getting those plies cut, and I gave him some props in during the show as well because he, like I said, he saved my life. But yeah, that's it. Otherwise, it was me in the garage and CNC and the wood and some swearing and some bloody knuckles.
Big shout out to that CNC machine, because if you had to hand cut that, oh,
No way. No way. Put the mold. I mean, the CNC was perfect for the mold. Again, it was just that process of being able to make the jig that holds everything.
and so where can people go to see more of your CNC creations and more of your art benches?
I have a website right now so it's under my business, which is called Bit Modern. And so the website is bitmodern.ca. I also have an Instagram and it's on Facebook as well, both Bit Modern. But that's where my stuff is right now. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, I might close it down and start it up as something else.
And it's about to be in the showcase at the DCDT, so people can go and see it in person.
That's right. So I'm going to leave everything up and running right now, and they can go to my website and check out. Every once in a while, I shoot stuff onto my Instagram too, just to keep relevant when I make stuff. Because I still make stuff here and there for again. That's why we're all here, right? We're all here to make stuff and to have fun. And so showing it off is another.
Yeah, and you get the added bonus of you get to show it off, and then you also get to see it in use with your kids.
That's right. Practicality.
Well, thank you for talking to us this week. It's been a pleasure, and your work is amazing.
Thank you so much.